I used to believe that love, once planted, would always blossom, especially the kind between a parent and their child. But that belief shattered the day I heard my daughter-in-law whisper behind the closed kitchen door, "We can't keep doing this. He's just a burden now." A burden. The word sliced through me like cold steel. I was on my way to get a glass of water, slowly dragging my feet along the wooden floor in my worn-out slippers. I stopped short when I heard my name. I knew I should have turned away, but curiosity is cruel. "Your father-in-law just sits there all day. He doesn't help. He can't." "What's the point?" she said. Then came my son's response, the one that truly broke me. "He's old Julie. What do you expect me to do? Not defend me, not protect me, not even a sigh of compassion, just resignation." That was the moment everything changed. Something inside me shriveled. The man I once cradled in my arms now spoke of me like I was furniture that had outlived its use. Let me backtrack for a moment. My name is Howard Lane, and I'm 72 years old. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 5 years ago. It started with a tremor in my right hand, then stiffness, then the shuffling, and eventually dependence. Now I need help to get out of bed, to button my shirt, to hold a cup of tea without spilling it. I moved in with my son and his wife 2 years ago. After a fall, broke my hip. The doctors said I couldn't live alone anymore, and so I packed up my memories into boxes and left the house I'd shared with my late wife for 40 years. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself family sticks together. But the truth, I had nowhere else to go. At first, Julie was kind. She brought me tea, fluffed my pillow, reminded the children to greet Grandpa. But time is a thief. It steals patience, especially from the young. The kindness faded. Then came the sighs, the whispers, the way she'd roll her eyes when I asked for help. And my son, oh my boy, I remember holding his little hand, walking him to school, staying up all night when he had the flu. I remember promising his mother on her deathbed I would raise him right. Did I? Because now all I get is silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that screams of resentment. After that whisper, I didn't get my glass of water. I turned slowly and returned to my room, my little prison, with beige walls and a flickering nightlight. I sat in my recliner, stared at the peeling photograph of my wedding day, and asked myself for the first time, have I lived too long? That night I didn't sleep. My body trembled more than usual, not from the Parkinson's, but from something deeper, humiliation. I stared at the ceiling, remembering a time when I was the one who brought life to this home. When I was strong, back then I built houses for a living. My hands were calloused, sure but steady. I could lift beams and pour concrete and still come home with enough energy to toss my boy in the air and hear him squeal with laughter. His favourite game was pretending to be Superman. I'd drape a red towel around his shoulders, and he'd run through the house shouting, "Daddy, look, I can fly." He flew far indeed, all the way into a world where I no longer fit. After his mother passed, it was just the two of us. I worked, cooked, helped with homework, attended every school play. I never remarried. Didn't need to. He was my purpose, my legacy. Now I feel like a stranger in his house, a ghost with a beating heart. I spend most of my days in silence. Julie keeps the kids busy, bustling them to school, ballet, soccer practice. I hear their laughter from downstairs, but they rarely come up to see me anymore. It's as if they've been told not to disturb Grandpa. Perhaps they sense the weight I add to the air. Sometimes I try to smile through it. I offer a joke, a compliment, but Julie rarely responds, and my son, when he does speak, it's in half sentences, eyes on his phone, hands already leaving the room. I used to believe I had raised a kind man. Maybe I was wrong. Mornings are the hardest. My joints are stiff. It takes 15 minutes just to sit up. I reach for the rail beside my bed and pull myself upright inch by inch. I keep a bottle of water and some crackers by the nightstand to delay having to ask anyone for breakfast. I don't want to be a bother. But the worst pain isn't physical. It's the silence during dinner, the way they pass dishes without making eye contact, the way the chair at the far end of the table is always left for me out of reach, out of mind. Last week they went out to dinner and didn't tell me. I found out only when I wheeled into the living room and saw the lights off, the silence thick. I waited in the dark, just like I did the day my wife died. And then I began to ask myself a question that festered deeper every time I looked in the mirror. What is the value of a man who no longer contributes? I still don't have an answer. The chair by the window became my sanctuary. Every morning, after forcing my stiff limbs into cooperation, I would drag my feet over to it, one slow shuffle at a time. It overlooked a patch of grass and the neighbour's garden. I watched Mrs. Heller water her roses every day, her stooped back, moving with quiet determination. She's older than me, lives alone. Somehow she manages. Sometimes I envy her. Here I watch the world go on without me. Teenagers ride past on bikes. Delivery drivers drop packages. Children walk home with sticky fingers from corner store candies. Life moves and I just sit and fade. Julie once caught me sitting there for hours. "You'll strain your back sitting like that all day," she said, not unkindly, but without waiting for my reply. She didn't understand I wasn't sitting for comfort. I was mourning the man I used to be, the man who built this family. One afternoon, as I sat in my chair, I watched a blue balloon float upward into the sky. A child must have lost it. I stared at it until it vanished, a little dot swallowed by clouds. And I thought, that's me, drifting, forgotten, eventually out of sight. There was a time when I mattered. I made decisions. I helped neighbours fix their roofs. I drove the Sunday school bus. I had purpose. Now I'm just extra. Sometimes I imagine my wife sitting across from me. Her eyes used to twinkle when she smiled. She would have never let this happen. She would have never let me feel useless. Some days I speak to her photograph, ask her what to do, how to find dignity when all that remains of you is bones and breath. Her silence, like the rest of this house, answers with indifference. One morning my grandson ran past the window, chasing his sister. I smiled and waved. He looked up, hesitated, and then kept running. He didn't wave back. It hit me harder than I expected. I used to bounce him on my knee. He used to call me Grampy with pure joy. Now I am just the quiet man upstairs, invisible. Later that day I tried to help. Julie was struggling with groceries, so I wheeled myself out to the porch and asked if she needed a hand. She turned sharply and said, No, just go back inside. Okay, I've got this." I nodded and obeyed, retreating like an unwanted child. The worst part, I wasn't angry. I was ashamed for trying. I sat back in my chair by the window. The late afternoon sun poured over me like an apology, and I finally admitted what I hadn't dared say out loud. Maybe I really am a burden, and if that's true, then what reason do I have to stay? It happened on a Saturday night. They were hosting a small birthday dinner for Julie's sister. Balloons, cake, laughter, it echoed through the house. The dining room glowed with warm light and clinking glasses. I wasn't invited, not even a passing mention. But I heard everything from upstairs. My room was dark as usual. The only sound was the creak of my old floor fan spinning in lazy circles. I told myself I didn't mind. But lies grow heavy, and mine collapsed under the weight of the next moment. I had wheeled myself to the top of the stairs to catch a glimpse of the gathering. Just a few seconds, just to see faces. Life. Then Julie saw me. "Oh, Dad," she said, startled and stiff. "You shouldn't be up here. We don't really have space tonight. Maybe tomorrow we can eat together, okay?" She was embarrassed, not for me, but of me. Before I could respond, she shut the door. I sat there in silence, half in shadow, half in disbelief. For several minutes I stayed at the top of the stairs, unsure what to do. Then I began the slow, shaky descent. Each step was a battlefield for my knees. When I finally reached the bottom, I maneuvered my chair through the narrow hallway and into the backyard. No one noticed, not one person. It was cold. The wind brushed against my skin like disapproval. I wheeled myself to a dark corner by the shed and watched through the dining room window. They were laughing, raising toasts. My son was smiling wide, his arm around Julie. For a moment I imagined I was watching strangers. Then I saw my empty chair at the end of the table. They'd set it out of habit, but not one plate, not one fork. I was erased. I don't remember crying. My eyes had dried out long ago. But I felt something else, a heavy stillness in my chest, like something important had snapped or sunk. I sat there for what must have been an hour, alone in the dark. The sound of clinking glasses and birthday songs muffled through the windows. Eventually the back porch light flicked on. Julie stepped outside, gasped, and ran over. "Why are you out here? You could have caught pneumonia." She wasn't worried, she was angry, embarrassed again. I didn't answer. I couldn't. She wheeled me in without another word. My son never came to check on me. No one asked if I was okay. That night I didn't sleep in my bed. I sat in the chair by the window until sunrise, and as the first light broke across the grass, I made a decision. If I had become nothing more than an afterthought in their lives, then maybe it was time for me to vanish for real. The letter took me 2 days to write, not because I didn't know what to say, but because my hands shook so badly. It took all my strength to hold the pen steady. I could have typed it, but that felt wrong, too impersonal. If these were to be my last words, they had to be in my own handwriting, crooked and frail as it was. I began simply, "To my son and to the family I no longer recognize." Then the words spilled like blood from an old wound. I told them everything about the day I overheard them, about the chair by the window, about watching them forget me from the outside looking in. I told them how it felt to sit in the cold during that birthday dinner, watching from the shadows, like some unwanted ghost haunting a party he once would have hosted. But I also told them about love, how I loved them, through scraped knees and broken hearts, late nights and early mornings. I reminded my son how I never missed a school play, how I stayed up for 3 nights straight when he had pneumonia, how I worked double shifts after his mother died to keep the roof over our heads, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because that's what love does. And now it seemed that love had expired. I wrote, I don't know when I became a burden in your eyes, but I want you to know that I never considered you one, not when you cried at night as a boy, not when you smashed your bike and knocked out your teeth, not even when you screamed at me during your teenage years. You were always my son, my reason, my joy. I ended with this. If I disappear, it's not to punish you, it's to free you, and perhaps to finally free myself from the ache of being unwanted. I placed the letter in an envelope and left it on my pillow. Then I packed a small bag, 2 changes of clothes, my medicine, some cash I had stashed away over the years, and the photo of my wife. I wheeled out of the house before dawn when the birds were just beginning to sing, and the world hadn't yet woken to scorn me. The sidewalk felt endless. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Every inch I moved was agony, but it was my agony chosen, not assigned. I stopped at a bus station, out of breath, out of strength. A kind old man saw me and offered his sandwich. We spoke for a while. He never asked why I was alone. I appreciated that. By nightfall, I found a small shelter for seniors. It smelled of disinfectant and quiet despair, but the nurse smiled, really smiled, and called me sir. I nearly wept from that single shred of dignity. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without pain in my chest. And back at home I knew the letter would be found. I don't know what day it was when they found the letter. I imagine Julie was the one to discover it first. She would have gone upstairs mid-morning, expecting to remind me to take my pills, only to find my bed cold and empty, my wheelchair gone, and a single envelope resting on my pillow like a quiet scream. Maybe she read it alone, or maybe she waited for my son. I wonder if her hands trembled as she opened it, if her heart raced as she realized I wasn't just sulking or lost in the garden, I was gone. I often imagine their faces as they read my words. I wonder if my son cried. Not the kind of tears you wipe away quickly, but the kind that come from deep in the gut, hot guilt, heavy sobs. The kind that hurt. Part of me wanted that, but more than that, I wanted them to understand, to finally see me not as a burden, but as a man who still felt, who still remembered love, who still ached when it was denied. I don't know if they tried to find me. The shelter staff never said. I told them I didn't want visitors. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The nurses here are kind. They speak to me gently, even when I'm slow to respond. One of them, Clara, even brings me crossword puzzles. She says they keep my mind sharp. I tell her it's my hands that need sharpening. Sometimes I sit by a different window now. This one overlooks a quiet courtyard. It's not much, but it has a tree. Just one, a little maple, thin and brave. I like that tree. Last week a boy at the shelter, maybe 12, came to volunteer. He wheeled me outside and asked if I had kids. I hesitated. Then I said I used to. He blinked, not understanding, and maybe that's best. I've thought about reaching out, about calling my son, maybe even letting him visit. But then I remember that night in the backyard, the way they forgot me, the way they pitied me only when I vanished. Regret is a strange thing. It doesn't heal, it only haunts. Still, I'm not bitter, not anymore, just emptied. And yet in the quiet of this new place, Something has begun to bloom inside me. Not hope, not quite, but peace. I am still here. I still matter, even if it's only to myself now. And as the days grow quieter, I hold tightly to that one truth, that I am not just what others label me, not a burden, not a ghost. I am Howard Lane, a father, a man, a life. And even if they didn't see it before, they will never forget it now. If you've read my story, I ask only this: look closely at the elders in your life, not with impatience, not with pity, but with memory. We were not always old. We were once full of strength, laughter, dreams, and most of all love. Just because our bodies falter doesn't mean our hearts have stopped beating with the same tenderness that raised you, protected you, waited up late for you. Don't wait until the wheelchair is empty to realize who sat in it. Visit. Speak kindly. Listen. Because one day you may find yourself in that same chair, by that same window, asking the same question. I once whispered into the silence, do I still matter? And the answer you'll want desperately is yes. So be the reason someone never has to doubt it. Please don't let love fade into absence. See us while we're still here.